Imagine yourself as a Roman senator, your sandals scuffing the grimy cobblestones of Subura, Rome's infamous pleasure district, where the air reeks of cheap wine, sweat, and desperation. Torchlight flickers, casting shadows on a figure in a dimly lit brothel, her face caked in garish makeup, her movements frantic as she services a line of clients with a fervor that draws gasps from the crowd. Your blood freezes as you recognize the delicate features beneath the cheap cosmetics. This isn't some desperate streetwalker. This is Valeria Messalina, Empress of Rome, wife of Emperor Claudius, willingly degrading herself for the thrill of anonymous encounters with the city's lowest dregs. Not a woman forced into prostitution by circumstance, but the most powerful woman in the empire, sneaking from the palace to compete with common prostitutes, determined to prove she could outlast them all in sexual endurance. You think you know Roman decadence. What you're about to uncover about Messalina will make Caligula's wildest exploits look like child's play. Because Rome's third empress didn't just abuse her power, she weaponized her sexuality in ways that terrorized an empire and sealed her own horrific fate. If this tale of scandal, power, and betrayal grabs you, hit that like button, share this with friends who crave history's darkest secrets, and subscribe to dive deeper into the hidden truths of the past. Comment below with where you're watching from. I'm amazed we're connected across the globe by our fascination with the wildest corners of history. Let's unravel how one woman's obsession nearly brought Rome to its knees. In 38 CE, Rome celebrated what seemed like the perfect imperial marriage. Valeria Messalina, barely 15, wed Emperor Claudius in a ceremony dripping with grandeur, symbolizing everything Romans held dear: nobility, fertility, and the promise of divine bloodlines. Messalina was the ideal empress on the surface, young, stunning, hailing from an ancient patrician family, with the poise to bear legitimate heirs. Claudius, 48, limping from what modern scholars identify as cerebral palsy, seemed almost unworthy of such a prize. Ancient sources paint Messalina as a vision of Roman beauty: pale skin, golden hair cascading in curls, and refined features that screamed aristocratic breeding. She played her role to perfection, bearing Claudius 2 children, Britannicus and Octavia, and gliding through state functions with the grace expected of an empress. Roman society was unforgiving, its moral codes carving women into rigid roles. Virtuous wives and mothers stood at the apex, while prostitutes and entertainers scraped the bottom of the social ladder. An empress was expected to embody feminine virtue so completely that even a whisper of scandal could shake the empire's foundations. Messalina knew this and wore her public persona like armor, a beacon of Roman ideals. But behind the polished marble of the Palatine Palace, a darker transformation was brewing, one that would shatter the illusion of imperial perfection. The first signs of trouble emerged in Messalina's first year as empress. Palace servants whispered of strange behavior. She'd dismiss her guards at odd hours, claiming exhaustion only to slip from her chambers in plain, unadorned clothes that masked her identity. At first, these midnight wanderings seemed like the harmless rebellion of a teenage empress, chafing against the suffocating protocols of palace life. But Messalina wasn't just seeking adventure. She was studying Rome's underbelly with the precision of a general plotting a campaign. She ventured into the Subura, Rome's red light district, where prostitutes plied their trade under flickering lamps. She observed their techniques, their territories, their clients, not out of idle curiosity, but with the methodical intent of someone preparing to compete. Her first documented plunge came during the Saturnalia festival of 40 CE, a time when social norms loosened and Romans indulged in role reversals. While Claudius performed religious duties, Messalina disguised herself as a commoner and entered a Subura brothel. She approached the keeper, offering to work for one night, her true identity hidden. The keeper, assuming she was a bored aristocrat seeking thrills, agreed. What unfolded that night stunned even the hardened professionals of the Subura. Messalina didn't just participate, she dominated. She serviced more clients than the brothel's most seasoned workers, her appetite shocking those accustomed to extreme demands. As dawn crept over the horizon, while other prostitutes collapsed in exhaustion, Messalina demanded more clients, more challenges, refusing to leave until the keeper forcibly sent her away. That night ignited something in her, a thrill not just of rebellion, but of proving her superiority in Rome's darkest arena. This wasn't a one-time experiment. It was the spark of an obsession that would consume her and threaten the empire. Within months, Messalina built a system to fuel her nocturnal adventures. Trusted servants smuggled her out of the palace, disguises transformed her into an unrecognizable figure, and false identities let her move freely through Rome's sexual underworld. But slipping into brothels wasn't enough for her competitive nature. She craved dominance, not just participation. She began organizing contests against Rome's most renowned courtesans, wagering enormous sums on her ability to outlast them in sexual endurance. These weren't private affairs, they drew crowds of wealthy Romans, eager to watch their empress degrade herself for sport. The most infamous contest came in 41 CE, when Messalina challenged Scylla, Rome's top prostitute, to an endurance match. The rules were brutal in their simplicity. Whoever serviced the most clients from sunset to dawn would win a fortune in gold. Roman nobles packed the venue, betting on the outcome as if watching gladiators in the Colosseum. Scylla, a seasoned professional, paced herself, servicing 25 clients before declaring herself exhausted at dawn. Messalina, she was just warming up. She pushed past 30 clients, stopping only when no more volunteers could be found. The crowd didn't cheer, they watched in horrified silence. This wasn't a desperate woman forced into degradation. This was the empress, choosing humiliation for the thrill of victory. Messalina's psychology was a labyrinth of contradictions. Her imperial status made debasement more exhilarating. The greater the contrast between her public dignity and private degradation, the more intense her satisfaction. She wasn't driven by lust alone, but by a need to dominate, to prove she could outshine anyone, even in Rome's lowest arenas. Her actions weren't just scandalous, they were dangerous, threatening the stability of an empire built on moral appearances. Yet Messalina was only getting started. If you're gripped by this tale of an empress who turned her power into perversion, hit that like button and share this with friends who love history's wildest stories. Subscribe to keep uncovering the secrets that shaped civilizations, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Let's see how far this story reaches. By 42 CE, Messalina's escapades evolved into something far more sinister. She didn't just want to compete, she wanted to control. She established a high-end brothel in a luxurious villa near the Campus Martius, disguised as a private club for Rome's elite. This wasn't a simple pleasure house. It was a criminal enterprise operating under imperial protection, staffed by aristocratic women and serving the city's most powerful men. Messalina used her authority to recruit participants, coercing noblewomen into joining by threatening their families with political or financial ruin. What appeared as voluntary participation was blackmail backed by the throne's power. Her client selection was strategic, targeting senators, military commanders, and wealthy merchants who held valuable information. Every encounter was documented by hidden servants who recorded conversations, noted weaknesses, and gathered intelligence Messalina could use for political manipulation. She had created a honey trap that made her one of the most informed individuals in Rome, knowing which senators planned to oppose imperial policies, which commanders harbored treasonous thoughts, and which merchants evaded taxes or smuggled goods. Her methods were psychologically devastating. She identified targets at state functions, then invited them to exclusive gatherings at her villa. Guests were offered increasingly exotic entertainment, culminating in encounters with aristocratic women whose identities were revealed only after compromising acts were documented. The psychological impact was calculated. Discovering they had engaged with the empress or their allies' wives created layers of blackmail that ensured silence and compliance. Messalina turned sexual shame into political control, weaving a web of compromised officials who dared not oppose her. She forced aristocratic women to betray their class, coerced leaders to act against their principles, and turned sacred bonds of marriage and family into tools of manipulation. Foreign ambassadors began noticing irregularities in Roman policy, decisions favoring specific individuals without explanation, military appointments for unqualified candidates backed by the empress, trade agreements benefiting merchants with no clear imperial ties. The empire's decision-making was being subverted by a brothel madam who happened to be married to the emperor. But even this audacious operation wasn't enough for Messalina. By 44 CE, her appetite for power and perversion outgrew secret schemes. She began organizing public orgies disguised as religious festivals, forcing Rome's elite to participate in degrading spectacles that cemented her control. These events started as formal observances, with Messalina claiming to honor gods and goddesses, requiring attendance from senators, their wives, and high-ranking officials. But the ceremonies morphed into scenes of systematic sexual humiliation. She introduced intimate elements as ancient practices, escalating until participants were too compromised to object without admitting their own participation in acts that violated Roman morality. Messalina's psychological manipulation peaked here. She understood that public degradation created bonds of shared shame, preventing opposition. Senators who opposed imperial policies found themselves stripped of dignity before colleagues, their authority shattered. She even recruited adolescent sons and daughters of prominent families, claiming their participation was religiously necessary, exploiting their obedience to imperial authority. Parents couldn't protect their children without confessing their own involvement, and leaders couldn't expose her without revealing their complicity. Messalina had made herself untouchable through a web of blackmail that ensnared Rome's ruling class. Foreign observers noted strange behavior in Roman officials during negotiations. Confident senators grew nervous, military commanders seemed distracted, their leadership psychologically broken by an empress who wielded sexual shame as a weapon more potent than military force. But Messalina's ambition reached its zenith in 48 CE, when she committed an act so outrageous it shocked even Romans accustomed to imperial excess. While Claudius was away in Ostia overseeing grain shipments, Messalina held a full wedding ceremony with Gaius Silius, a handsome young senator she'd pursued for months. This wasn't a symbolic ritual or secret affair, it was a legal Roman marriage, complete with religious ceremonies, official witnesses, and formal contracts. She had declared herself divorced from Claudius and remarried while still empress, an act with staggering legal and political implications. The wedding celebration became a multi-day orgy, drawing Rome's remaining uncorrupted aristocracy and forcing her allies to acknowledge her open rebellion against imperial authority. Messalina's psychological state by this point suggests a complete break from reality. She referred to Silius as emperor and herself as his empress, issuing orders in his name and planning a coronation to legitimize their rule. Silius, initially flattered, became a pawn in her deadly game, realizing too late he was trapped in her vision of transforming Rome through her perverse will. Claudius remained unaware until loyal freedmen risked their lives to inform him. His initial disbelief gave way to horror as evidence mounted, witness testimonies, official documents, undeniable proof of bigamy and treason. He returned to Rome with loyal troops and confronted Messalina in the gardens where she celebrated her new marriage. Her final moments were a mix of defiance and terror as she realized her web of blackmail had met a force stronger than shame, imperial survival. Her execution was swift, but her erasure was systematic. Claudius ordered her name struck from monuments, her images destroyed, her memory condemned through damnatio memoriae, making it treason to speak of her. The empress who used sexual power to control an empire was herself erased by the ultimate expression of state power. If this journey into the darkest corners of power and perversion has left you hungry for more, hit that like button, share this with friends who love history's wildest tales, and subscribe to keep uncovering the truths authorities tried to bury. Comment below with where you're watching from. Let's connect over our shared curiosity about the past. Click the video on your screen to explore another shocking chapter of history, and let's keep digging into the secrets that shaped civilizations. Messalina's story isn't just a scandal, it's a warning of how far power can corrupt when unchecked. Stay curious, stay engaged. And let's keep history alive together.